I thought were interesting. So I saw articles about this for a while, but apparently now it's real. You pay thousands of dollars for a smart refrigerator, and Samsung is going to put ads on it. All of this seems like madness to me, like essentially all smart devices. I don't have any smart anything or want any smart anything. I remember I was on Pulse Security Weekly, and they were talking about the disaster of having a smart bed when you lose the connection to the network and your bed gets stuck. And, why would anybody want a smart bed? They had some kind of answer, but it didn't make any sense to me. Why would anybody want a smart fridge? Anyway, everything has to be smart. Everything has to be hooked up to the internet. Therefore, it all has a whole bunch of new ways to fail, and they'll put ads on it. That seems pretty rude. So, Lucid is apparently an electric car company formed by people who left Tesla in disgust and think they can do a better job, and they claim they're going to have a $50,000 or less autonomous car for people, fully autonomous, not like a Tesla, but where you don't have to pay any attention. It'll totally drive just like a Waymo. So if they can do that, that would be awesome. I know Waymo is paying $500,000 for each of those cars, and that's a problem. If there's some way to do it for 10 times less, that would sure be nice, but it's hard to believe it's possible. Anyway, that's what they say they're going to do. It's a Saudi company, Saudi-backed electric vehicle startup. So I'm mighty skeptical that they can do it for 1/10 the cost of a Waymo. So the FCC adopted a rule targeting robocalls, and I certainly get a ton of robocalls. And what they say is that they must have more caller ID data, so the call has to tell you where it's from, whether it's coming from overseas, and some kind of summary of like what company it is or something. That sounds pretty good, although the robocalls I think are already illegal. So I think the crooks will just come up with a promising lie to put on there, claiming to be from like the police or the IRS or something to get you to answer. We'll see what comes of this, but this kind of reminds me of gun control, where they pass rules that legitimate gun owners have to follow, and the criminals just break the rules, and so it seems kind of pointless. So everyone's getting upset about this, and I was sort of hoping one of the students who plays video games might have an intelligent opinion. I don't play video games. I haven't in decades. So apparently, Trump has been posting memes from Halo. Apparently, the Flood is some sort of horrible monster in the game Halo. It's some kind of alien virus that infects people and turns them into some horrible thing. And they're claiming that they're using this to call for the destruction of immigrants, that immigrants are a disease infecting people and making them evil, and they must just be gunned down or something. So that's pretty horrible, but pretty standard, I think, for ICE and the Trump administration, especially under Stephen Miller. And Trump has said that. He said immigrants are vermin, they're rapists, they're polluting the blood of our country. All stuff, by the way, directly taken from Adolf Hitler. No mistake. Trump did keep a book of Hitler's speeches by his bed to learn Adolf Hitler's rhetoric, and he uses it all the time. A lot of Republicans do, actually. And like George Bush with his shock and awe, which was a direct translation of Sturm und Drang, the military technique of Hitler. And anyway, people are getting very upset, saying this is really terrible, and I'm not educated enough about video games to know if this is any worse than the stuff Trump normally says. But anyway, people are getting upset about it, and those who know enough about video games may be able to judge whether that is reasonable. So I was more interested in this. I've been following AI security for years, and I was horrified about 2 months ago when I saw a study that showed that the number one use of AIs is therapy/companionship. So the main thing people do with large language models is use it for a friend or a confidant or a doctor or a therapist, all of which are terrible uses of it because it has no actual human feelings or judgment, and it tells you that whatever you're doing is right. So it's not in remotely like talking to somebody to help you through your problems. It's very likely to just make everything worse. And now OpenAI is beginning to deal with this because they got sued for teenagers that talk to these OpenAI-based personalities and then commit suicide or something. So they're trying to deal with it. So they have decided to publish statistics of how many of the conversations are troubling, and they say that 0.15% every week, people using ChatGPT talk about suicide. And they claim a similar percentage show heightened levels of emotional attachment to ChatGPT. Now, that is very hard for me to believe. If the majority of use is for therapy/companionship, that would suggest that a lot more than 0.1% of those people are forming an emotional attachment to ChatGPT. I would expect a number more like 20 or 30%. Why would they say they're using it for therapy/companionship if they don't form an emotional attachment to it? Anyway, so they're claiming they can measure this and then they can decide what to do about it. And that amounts, you have such a large number of people, that amounts to millions of people every week talking to ChatGPT about suicidal thoughts, which I could easily believe that. I mean, there's a certain number of people depressed, a certain number of people considering suicide, and if everybody's using ChatGPT as a cheap therapist, I guess some people will be using it as a therapist to discuss their suicidal thoughts. The problem is, real therapists, when you bring up suicidal thoughts, they will try to do something to save you, like put you in contact with, they might even have you involuntarily committed somewhere to stop you from hurting yourself, and ChatGPT doesn't currently have anything like that. Now, what it probably ought to do is get a human on the line, or at least give you like a hotline number, a suicide hotline number to call or something. It's an interesting issue, really. I mean, they have this thing, people talk to you about all sorts of things. What obligation do they have to notice suspicious discussions that are disturbing, and what do they have to do about it? It's an interesting issue. You could argue that Google should do the same just for Google searches. I'm sure people do Google searches like, how do I commit suicide? What's the best poison? Things like that. And you could argue that maybe Google should be detecting that and replying with something helpful like a suicide hotline number. I don't know if they have a legal obligation to do that. But I guess anyway, it raises an interesting issue. I don't think there's a simple answer, but it certainly raises an interesting issue. And now that these things are being treated as humans and people are using them as friends and romantic partners, then it seems like they've, by making a product that does that, they've incurred a larger responsibility for the emotional consequences to the users. So I guess we're going to find out in the lawsuits that are coming up. So this is pretty horrifying. The police are using flock cameras all over the place to do license plate reading, and now recent articles say they're integrating them with Ring cameras again, so they'll just have lots of surveillance of everybody everywhere. But what's shocking here is not that they have that, but the way they used it. This woman was at home, and the cop knocked on the door and told her, "We have video evidence of you stealing a package nearby. We have license plate readers showing your car was there at the time. We know you did it. We're 100% sure. You have to confess." And she said, "But I didn't do it." And they said, "Okay, you're just not cooperating. We're going to prosecute you and you're going to jail." And she worked in a financial industry, like at a bank, where if you any accusation of theft will really hurt you. And so she was able, thankfully, she had a Rivian, a car, I think a Rivian, an electric car, which took all kinds of video every time she drove it. And so she was able to compile really convincing proof that she didn't do it, that she was somewhere else, everywhere she went, records of photographs of her being other places. The cop said they had an absolute picture of her, but he wouldn't show it to her, the picture proving she stole it. And she couldn't reach anybody at the police station to even look at her evidence, so she finally sent it to the police chief, who finally contacted her and said, "Oh, that's very convincing evidence. We're dropping the case." She can't even reach the cop that accused her of stuff. She never saw the evidence. So apparently, they just try to bully people by lying about the evidence. And this is a terrible way to do it. And what she points out, which I think is very correct, is now you're guilty until proven innocent. And I saw replies from people in my Mastodon feed saying, "I'm a privacy enthusiast, so I very carefully do not have records of my location, videotape, photographic evidence of me being places. If they were to accuse me of being somewhere, I would not have a bunch of records to prove that I was somewhere else." And you shouldn't have to in America. You're supposed to be guilty, innocent until proven guilty, and the cops are not supposed to just claim they have sure proof of you when they actually have no proof at all and are totally the wrong person. It is pretty shocking, and reminds me a lot of what ICE does, where they just grab random people and beat them up and arrest them even when they can prove they're a citizen and stuff like that. It just seems like a pretty awful example of police abuse. and aided by technology. This reminds me of all the cases of when they arrest the wrong person with facial recognition. The cops have some technical tool and they trust it too much. And you go arrest people, and that's the only evidence they have, and the tool really isn't giving you evidence that's that convincing. All right, well, that's enough of the news. Let me stop this. Let's get down to the official material, which is here. All right. Wait, what? Oh, okay, I see.